Missouri Legacy presents Gordon McCann, backup guitarist.
The only reason old-time fiddling exists, or existed, was for dancing. All the different styles of fiddle playing were for different types of dancing. A fiddler playing by himself, you tend to speed up if you play without accompaniment. The dancers want a steady time. That's an important thing to them, is to have a steady tempo.
And so their rhythm is paramount.
Howard Marshall is director of the Missouri Cultural Heritage Center.
So you need some kind of backup instrument to play behind the melody that the fiddle renders so the dancers can dance. The nature of the guitar as an instrument indicates that it provides a strong rhythmic series of chords to back up and accompany the melody that the violin is providing.
The guitar was not the first instrument to back up a fiddle.
They had what they call beating the straws or fiddlesticks. That's where the expression fiddlesticks comes from, I think. And they would take either knitting needles or two straws or something like that, and a person would stand, and while he played, they play high up on the bridge. And what you do is you just beat out like you would on a drum across the strings. And it'll almost be kind of an echo of what he's playing as he saws with the bow, you know. So there were your first, second instruments. Now, the guitar didn't really come into this country until, I think, just before the Civil War. So you started having, especially family bands emerging after the Civil War, all through the Ozarks here.
The backup is important, but it doesn't have to be guitar. Now, for fiddle contests, where you want to emphasize the modern understandings of the fiddle backup, guitars completely dominate, and perhaps rightly so. A person like Gordon can make or break a fiddler, particularly in a contest situation where if the backup guitarist is not perfectly in sync with you in mind and body, you might as well put the cut and pick an instrument away and go have a soda pop because you're lost.
If you listen to this music very often, you would soon learn to recognize which guys have been playing together a long time and which hadn't. The seconds runs will fit that man's, the things he's doing on the fiddle. In other words, he won't come out 2 or 3 notes behind the fiddler or ahead of him or something. Everything will just kind of come in, and when they quit, it'll just be like that. There's a tendency sometimes to put too much in, too many runs in. Well, the next thing you know, you're upstaging the fiddler. And fiddlers don't like to be upstaged. Now, you'll have to learn that when you get around them. They don't like to be upstaged.
The thing about Gordon is that he is skillful enough, and he's so broadly knowledgeable about the fiddle in Missouri that he can back up anybody. So whenever Gordon McCann's around, all the fiddlers relax because they know there's somebody in the mob who can play the guitar correctly behind their fiddling. It's kind of interesting that Gordon is content with the role of backup musician. Now, not very many musicians are content and seem to take pleasure in being a backup performer. But a wonderful thing about Gordon is that he could be a star performer on his own if he wanted to. He has that kind of skill. But Gordon really prefers to play behind the fiddler because he's devoted to the tradition of fiddling, and that's the rightful position of the guitar backup.
It's just part of the game. You know, they're the lead instrument, and always have been.
And he accepts that and really brings that job to a kind of zenith, you know, in a way that very, very few guitar players are ever able to do.
The different styles of fiddling call for different styles of backup.
Now, we have, in this part of the country, pretty much a basic type of seconding, what I think Mother Maybelle Carter called crowfoot seconding. You can make most of the chords with 3 fingers. Now you get over west of here and you have your Texas seconding, which is mostly bar chords. An entirely different type of seconding than this is, but it fits the Texas style of fiddle playing, which is an entirely different style from this old-time fiddling.
Gordon travels all over, you know, and boy, he'll play with anybody. He enjoys it. And he always packs his tape recorder. He could go to very different parts of the state with different fiddling traditions and be right at home and be able to play. He has the instinct of a scholar and the personality of a country gentleman, which is a pretty nice combination in my book.
FM Backup Guitarist was produced for Missouri Legacy by Susan Newstead. Bob Walsh was the fiddler. Funding for this program was provided by the Missouri Arts Council, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, KOPN, and the Missouri Committee for the Humanities, the state-based arm of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Special thanks to the Missouri Cultural Heritage Center for their assistance. Missouri Legacy presents Bob Walsh, old-time fiddler and storyteller. Bob Walsh grew up playing old-time fiddle.
And I can kind of remember playing before I went to the first grade.
And he has worked for 35 years as a conservation agent. He preserves both of these experiences in hundreds of anecdotes.
Bob gets together in all kinds of groups with lots of people.
Charlie Walden is a review panelist for the Missouri Cultural Heritage Center's Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program.
Mostly when I see him, he's with other fiddlers or other musicians at some kind of gathering. And if there's a lull in the music, Bob can generate an anecdote about as fast as anybody. I think he's a teller of personal anecdotes. It just so happens that most of them are hilarious. They're about real people and about real things that have happened to them, and some of them are just, they'll knock you down. They're so funny.
Bob claims he's not a real storyteller because all of his stories are true. Like this one, about the man who reeled in a neighbor's chicken for dinner.
Well, now I'm talking about back when fried chicken was a treat. At our house it was, anyhow. And that son of a gun set a tea kettle of water on the stove. He walked out on this little old room behind the house, and he had a sack of corn sitting there. He reached in his sack and got him 2 grains of corn and stuck them on a fish hook. And he reached in the sack then and got a handful of corn and threw it out in the yard behind the house. And he didn't say a thing, just about like that. And boy, the chickens just come running from every direction. Yeah, started picking up his corn, and as soon as they started eating the corn, then he took and cast this fish hook. He had on a rod and reel there, and he cast that with a fishing rod right out in among those chickens. Of course, when that corn hit the ground, there's one of them picked it up and ran with it, and he set the hook, and of course, that chicken couldn't say anything, because, it swallowed the hook down, and he jerked its tongue about all that chicken went was just about like that, just a little old squeak, and he jerked that thing and cranked that chicken right into the back door of that house and reached down and pulled its head off. Took that chicken and held, and I stood there with my mouth hanging open in amazement, and that guy stuck that chicken down in a big old 5-gallon bucket there and took a tea kettle of water and poured it around on it, scalded it, and picked the feathers off of it, cut that chicken up and fried it, and we had fried chicken, gravy, and the whole works. He fixed a nice dinner there, and when we left, old Les told me that those were Miss Hunt's chicken. That son of a gun's doing that all the time. People will go to no ends to violate the law, In Roaring River, we had this guy stealing trout out of our trout hatcheries. We were losing fish, and we got wind that something was going wrong, and we got to watching this one old boy, and I sat and watched him this one morning, and he was wearing loose overalls, and he'd woke up to the rearing pools where we had the breeder trout, and he'd stand on the edge of that thing, and he'd just stand there and dangle around for a while, until finally caught him a little later in the morning. What he did is he run this hook down and line down these pant legs from inside his bib overalls, let it down with a salmon egg on the end of it, or worm, I believe it was. But it let on the end of a little hook down into this rearing pool, and the fish took hold of it, and he just held on and just kept his foot solid against Walden, that fish tired itself out. Didn't take it too long fighting a short line like that. And then he just hand over hand with his hand inside his bib over, pulled that fish right up his pant legs, about halfway between his ankle and his knee, and then he'd kind of stiff-leggedly walk out of there with that fish. That's about what my life's been, is law enforcement in a rural area and fiddling for a hobby.
Although he put the fiddle aside for several years while raising a family, Bob now plays more than he ever did, and also judges fiddling contests.
They got to having contests again. I began to go to some of the contests. They formed a National Fiddlers Association, and I was one of the first 9 certified judges in the National Fiddlers Association.
He is also responsible for writing and promoting the bill that made the fiddle Missouri's state instrument.
It says something about the roots of the state, I think, more than, naming any other instrument I could think of. It says something about the people who originally settled the state, and also, in addition, it says that the things that those people valued are still valued by people here in Missouri.
And old-style fiddling varies. One moment you play a breakdown, the next moment you play a waltz, and then you're back to playing polka, schottisch, you're playing anything. Lots of lively song music and that type of stuff.
He's more typical of most older Missouri fiddlers who they've really concentrated on learning lots and lots of tunes. He bows each note with care and plays with a kind of a delicate touch. It's a real elegant way of playing, the way Bob plays.
Bob Walsh, old-time fiddler and storyteller, was produced for Missouri Legacy by Susan Newstead. Funding for this program was provided by the Missouri Arts Council, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, KOPN, and the Missouri Committee for the Humanities, the state-based arm of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Special thanks to the Missouri Cultural Heritage Center for their assistance.